Let me start with a quick introduction. So the title today is Digital Transformation of Financial Services. We have a group of 3 speakers, 2 of them from Swift and 1 from C3. And for those, I think most everyone in this audience is familiar, Swift is a global member-owned cooperative and the world's leading provider of secure financial messaging services. You'll see in the presentation a lot of background information, as well as a lot of the ambition of what a vision that we call Federated AI that originates in Swift, but has requirements for a partnered model that has several companies, including C3, as a key portion of a portion of hardware and software assets that will enable the future of what Swift has in mind. Let me introduce myself quickly. I'm Naresh Shah. I am a VP of Services within C3, and I'm also the Engagement Director for our Center of Excellence with Swift. And then to my left is Tom Zschach, who is Swift's Chief Innovation Officer. Tom is responsible for growing and championing Swift's innovation capabilities and driving new growth opportunities across the company in collaboration with the Swift community, which you'll hear about, and the partners, which you'll also hear about. To his left is Adi Bhashyam, who is the Group VP and Head of Solutions Engineering at C3 AI. Adi is responsible for all the technical activities with respect to prospective customers developing AI and ML solutions with us. And to his right, you have Dr. Chalapathy Neti, who is the head of the AI Center of Excellence at Swift. He has deep expertise in several aspects of AI, including deep learning, NLP, speech, and vision. And he's responsible for building and incubating an advanced technology business anchored around AI and cloud. So without further ado, I'll ask Tom to come up here and start. And we will have a Q&A session at the end, so I'll ask that everyone hold their questions until then, the last 15 minutes. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Naresh. We're just going to start with check the technology, start with a quick video, and then I'll start with my comments and remarks.
Our world is changing fast. And with this comes the need to keep pace. To create, evolve, and deliver solutions that meet our customers' needs and improve their lives. At Swift, we're collaborating with the brightest minds to make transactions faster, smarter, better. Because we believe some challenges are meant to be solved together. With our community, we're reimagining what we can achieve through innovation. Investing in a new AI platform that will power the creation of smarter solutions, like real-time anomaly detection to validate transactions before they're sent. We're reaching into the world of central bank digital currencies to reduce fragmentation, connect up technologies, and enable new possibilities for sending digital money across borders. And we're guiding securities players through the emerging world of tokenized assets, increasing the speed and efficiency of post-trade processing to help a new market grow. These innovations will help our community adapt to finance's ebbs and flows, not just to stay afloat, but to thrive and lead both today and in the future. But we're not embarking on this journey alone. We're encouraging our community to join us too, to innovate with us and be part of shaping the future of finance. Faster, smarter, better.
Thanks for joining us today. I'm really excited about the work that we're doing, and I'm really happy to share this with you today. And we talked about a couple different variations and the things that we could cover today, and I think the video sets the context nicely. And we want to talk about Federated AI. And I know there's a lot of AI specialists here, but there's also people who some of this terminology is new. So I want to kind of dive into what Swift is, why Swift, and what we see some of the opportunities are, but also kind of the overlap and the partnership that we expect with C3 in terms of their ability to help us deliver these products here and with our strategic intent. So Federated AI is really a method for training models, to teach models. And the difference is that the data is in different locations, many different locations across our community and across different locations. And it's also done in a way where the underlying data to train the model doesn't have to be shared. So fortunately, we deal with institutions and we don't have to deal with things like personal privacy or in Europe, GDPR, for example. But the privacy of our data is one of the most important aspects of what we do. And I'll explain a little bit about our rationale and the approach that we're taking with C3 as a part of the platform to do that. But it's a very exciting opportunity. We have great data on our platform. We have a great opportunity to work with our banks and with strategic partners like C3 and others. And I can tell you that this is not just a concept and on the drawing board, this is work that we're actually doing today. So there's a bit of a call to action in here to say we're open for business, and Swift's happy to work with our community, which is a pretty large number of institutions, to help develop this and then ultimately test what we'll be bringing to market. So I thought a good place to start would be just in terms of who Swift is, and people in the financial industry would know that. Some people might have a slightly different view of that from us being kind of unfortunately thrusted into the headlines in the last 3 weeks or so. So let's just kind of start level set with what Swift is and probably what Swift isn't. So we are a member-owned cooperative. We have over 11,000 institutions, financial institutions, and some of the largest corporates in the world are participants in the Swift network. It's a communication network for payments and for securities. And so one of the things that people don't think about with Swift much is that roughly half of our traffic is actually in support of the securities business and securities market infrastructure for things like post-trade processes and settlement. We're a cooperative, and I think that's a huge advantage for us. We're not a for-profit first entity. We're a cooperative. We're owned by 2,400 of the banks, and their ownership is based on their usage of the platform. So truly member-owned. And exist for the benefit of our member banks, our financial institutions, our market infrastructures, and so forth. And I think the other thing I always like to remind people of, and we have some good data coming off of 2021, because if we were talking about blockchain and we're talking with some of the DeFi people, and I have nothing against blockchain, I think it's an amazing technology and we'll find some really interesting use cases for it. But the reports of Swift's death, are greatly exaggerated. Our traffic on the network last year was up 11.4%, right? And there's different reasons that drive the traffic on the network, but we're moving up in more volume and I think becoming more important as opposed to moving in the other direction. So I also want to cover off why Swift. We have a very unique position as a trusted global neutral party that goes across 200 countries. As it says on the slide here. And we actually think that the data that we have, and in working with our customers and with our communities, we can actually solve problems that others can't. So even the most sophisticated institutions in the world, whether that's a big tech, the largest banks in the world, we think that we could do things together better and faster. Right? We could do things better together than any one institution, regardless of how sophisticated they are, can do alone. So we have a kind of a special situation there. We're also a very trusted entity, right? We don't compete with our banks, for example. We're there to help them service their customers. So it's a very complementary relationship. So when we say, hey, will you collaborate with us? Is this a problem that you're interested in working on? The answer is yes. And I have to say, in the kind of just a little over 2 years I've been at Swift, one of the most pleasant surprises I've had is that whenever I make that call, people are interested in talking to Swift and they want to work with Swift, and that's fantastic. And when I think about the partnership with C3, that's especially helpful because a lot of their customers are our customers too, which makes it a much more kind of productive environment. I want to. This is kind of a busy slide, but I want to talk about our ambition and kind of what our drivers are here in terms of an AI platform and what we're looking to do it and kind of how we're looking to put this together. So first and foremost, the business drivers for us is really to roll out an AI platform across the company that cuts across multiple use cases, right? So the real interesting one to start with, and I think we're probably starting with the hard one as opposed to the kind of the easy prototypes, is our transactions. And that's where we think we could probably be able to demonstrate the most value in the AI and the models and the new products that we bring to market. We're also going to be looking at things like our operational intelligence, so how we run that network at a standard that's that you almost can't compare with other institutions in terms of our scalability, our reliability, our performance, all of those things that people and our customers really rely on for us. And of course, the customer experience and driving things like adoption and usage of our products. Those are all important use cases for us. So it has to be performant. And we're talking about going from a situation where we're monitoring transactions in the network to doing that in advance, right? So this whole idea of pre-validation of a payment to be able to deliver on our goal, which is to deliver instant and frictionless payments. We think we have to kind of slide that to the left, if you will, and do that on a pre-val basis. And that has to be very performant. And we're talking, kind of milliseconds here, not seconds and minutes and longer. It has to be scalable. Everything we do has to scale just because of the reach and in our position out there. And we have to do it at an economical price as well. We have to deliver these platforms at a low cost because, again, we're not a for-profit first company, and if we charge our customers too much, they won't like us, and they own us, and then they can fire us all, and that would be bad. So we don't want to get fired. So we'll do it in a cost-effective way. Our approach is really, I think, a little bit unique in that the platform that we're building in-house, is in-house. And we're building it on containers, and we're running it as a cloud service to give us the option to move to a hybrid cloud model. But the reason that we chose this path is because I didn't want to spend 2 years arguing with security people or regulators or people who might be worried, and rightfully so, about privacy and protecting our privacy and the security of our data. It's very the kind of things that you could derive from our data, could have a pretty large impact on the financial community. So we wanted to kind of front load the value that we have from the platform. We have very, very good operational platforms internally. So it's a very mature company, very mature platforms. So we're going to build that platform in-house as a container platform on Red Hat and looking with the option at some point to move workloads into a hybrid cloud situation. We also have the ability to kind of build it right from the ground up. So what does right mean? Secure, private, scalable, right? And a lot of the work that we've done with the platform team at C3 is to make sure that we can run this platform at the standard that you'd expect in a financial institution. And we're able to achieve that. And we are doing this with a partnership with the different strategic vendors. So C3 is obviously the platform that we're using. We're running this all in Red Hat as a kind of hybrid multi-cloud container platform running OpenShift 4. Just as a side note, all of the newest platforms that we're building, including our new transaction management system, are being built with the same platform stack and the same architecture. Right, so we're not doing something different, but in terms of modernizing the firm, all of our new platforms that we're rolling out at Swift are going to be based on a container and microservices architecture. The other thing that I would note here is that we're using a really kind of innovative company you've probably never heard of called Cove. They actually supply us with software-defined memory. And one of the earlier speakers today was talking about the limitation of 256 gigabytes in terms of the ability to train the model. We have unlimited memory. And software-defined memory can actually be deployed and harvest RAM that sits on a server that's used for no other reason than having a limited amount of memory. So one of the drivers here is to be able to train the model with the data we have available, not write a model that can be trained on the amount of RAM that you have or the compute powers you have on the machine. So super, super innovative and should give us a pretty good outcome here. One other thing that I wanted to cover off with you and moving on is this whole concept of responsible AI. We're not a fintech. We like to be, have some of the attributes of a fintech, but we'd never trade the trust, or the situation where we're trusted stewards, of our customers' finances or the privacy of their data or anything else that's important to them. So building this platform in a responsible way is hugely important to us. We also need to do it, as I said, in a cost-effective way. So when I look at the first one here in terms of accuracy, we need to have more accurate models so we don't end up in a situation with what Tom mentioned at the start of the day, where you do these big giant investments and you never actually see the value of that. So we're taking a very kind of methodical approach here to the work that we're doing to make sure that every step of the way that we can validate that this actually makes it better makes it more accurate, makes it faster, or we'll try something else. Right? We're not going to hold on to winners forever and hope for the best. As we heard earlier from Tom and others, that's a failed strategy. In the last session with Joan from B of A, explainability is the second question out of every customer's mouth. So one is, what is your ambition and what are you trying to do? And the second one is, and when you do that, can you explain it? Because if you can't explain it, we can't use it. It's pretty black and white. It doesn't take a lot to understand those the requirements. We of course, we have to be fair, and we understand that trade-off between fairness and accuracy. These are complicated problems. I spoke to somebody last week in getting ready for the risk framework that we're going to use for the platform, and I haven't validated this, but it's a pretty interesting statement. They said in Europe alone, in the EU, there's 21 different definitions of fairness, and it gets worse. Right? They're all mutually exclusive. So that's very European to me, by the way, but again, I'm just throwing that out there as some evidence. These are complex issues that you need to kind of start with early. Again, that's going to be expected from us and what we do. We obviously have to have an audit trail on the models. People that work in banks and have worked in other parts of financial services understand that requirement. And then again, the models need to be secure. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, first we're going to talk about how C3 is going to help us implement this, and then we're going to talk about kind of our ambitions and the way in which we're going to work and move towards a federated data model and the way we expect to work with our customers. So with that, Adi, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tom. So we've been working with Swift now for a while, and I will say before getting into any of the details, that they walk this talk every single day, right? Whether it's this focus on security or focus on privacy, there are clear rules of operation that every member of Swift in terms of the working team sort of adheres to and requires of all of us that work with them. And we've learned a lot as a result, so thank you. Just Deepak and everyone else, it's been pretty amazing. They've pushed us further on things like security, far beyond anyone else has, right? And so just testimony to just walking this talk. What I wanted to do is give you a little bit of color, just building on what Nikhil went over in the plenary session, and if you get a chance to go into the ML deep dive tomorrow or Scott Korenskis' deep dive on the platform, you'll see a little more of this color. But just the core concept and the way we've really made it seamless is if you think about the whole C3 AI application platform, I should stop saying suite now, is that we've lit every component of the technology is wrapped around with a metadata wrapper that is controllable and composable, and you can mix and match, if you will, which then lets us do, for instance, as you get into deploying models into a production environment, tie these things to champion challenger models seamlessly, right? Allow for hot swapping models if you're running alternate model pipelines very quickly. Allow multiple pipelines to be associated with the same asset so that you can either statically or dynamically change over to get to better results. Automatically compute drift model performance based on either a golden period of time or something else so that you're constantly comparing to baseline in order to understand where you're at any given point in time. And that coupled with the art of actually building models, which I do not want to discount, actually gets you to a pretty strong place. And so the idea is really rapid iteration with a very strong foundation. As you get into explainability, and John, you covered a lot of this as well, right? And when you talked about what Bank of America is doing, it is key and imperative to make sure that it is clear to the end users why they should do something. And so explainability takes on a very important element there. And remember, for Swift, those users of these models are not necessarily Swift employees. They could be employees of members of the network that then consume and then react to things. And so it becomes a second-degree problem, if you will, that has to manifest itself. Interpretable results are also insufficient if you're not able to use words that less sophisticated users actually can understand and react to. And so the whole metadata capability that we've built into the feature store plus all of our models is really around making this part of the model pipelines stand out. I'm not going to say we've solved the fairness problem, right? It is, like you said, it's all, at some point, it's a mutually exclusive set of constraints to solve for. But I think what we have been able to do is make sure that we retain the emphasis on very clear privacy and access control at a very basic level. So you don't use inadvertently the wrong data to do things. And then as we get into things like bias detection or data exploration and normalization before getting into models, I think that's kind of core to what we've done. And some of the V8 capabilities that are coming out are sort of taking this to the next level. So you can anonymize specific fields before pulling them into models, right? You can limit queries that are that ask for PII data in any way, and so on. Auditability is and we just call it lineage, call it provenance. Like, it is what happened to every prediction, and then can you take it back all the way to the source data in a way that is verifiable, is a key component to everything we've built since I've been at C3, but also going back, which is that because everything flows through the metadata layer, you can chain these things seamlessly. And so it's an important element to both data lineage informing a model, but also model provenance and model capabilities. Who actually provisioned this model? Was it approved to be put in production before you put it in production? And so on, right? And so the key here is this is the tool. The process then has to use the tool, right? And so as you get into not MLOps as in ML engineering, but MLOps as in actually the act of taking models from ad hoc experimentation to putting them into production, using these capabilities becomes key, right? And lastly, I think we've always emphasized security, both because it's been required of us, and also we're dealing with some pretty important data and elements here. And so being able to tie into existing methods of security, tie into permissions that have been either allocated or revoked for individuals, tying access to individuals, logging actions taken by individuals, et cetera, is a fundamental capability here. So just a little double click there in terms of what we've done. And I think as we've set this up with the Swift team, we've now said, okay, now with that foundation, how do we go into federated data and federated learning, right? And then how does the footprint changing into hybrid cloud and various footprints affect this whole capability? So Chalapathy, I'll hand over to you.
So I think we heard why Swift can play an incredible role, both in terms of the richness of the data that flows over the network, as Tom pointed out, 11,000 plus institutions, 200 plus currencies, 2,700 plus corridors. If you look at the number of correspondent banks, it's of the orders of tens of thousands in terms of the payment routes that are possible. So if we build a model of what a normal payment is, inducing what an anomaly or an abnormal or a suspicious payment is, we believe we can provide a starting point to all of our 11,000 customers to build on top of with their proprietary data, as was shown by my colleague from Bank of America, to really look at what looks unusual. And what we are looking at is not just on the amounts, but every aspect of that Swift payment. The sender information, the beneficiary information, the corridors. Sometimes these corridors are very complex. They could have multiple hops. because there's no direct correspondent relationship between the sender and the beneficiary. They could go to 3, 4 hops. And you have to have a risk profile of what that looks like. So what we have decided, again, I love Tom's presentation this morning. I mean, we have to, as a community, pardon my saying so, take the BS out of AI. So we have to be very methodical in terms of asking the question. You know, in general, I've been saying this for the last 3 decades, that anything that is digital, that has a data exhaust, can be improved with AI. But if there's a human process, as Gary Kasparov was talking from a chess machine, if I improve that by, say, 0.1%, that leads to no change in the number of people that look at anomalies. Why do it, right? So I've been using the term AI that matters at scale. When I say it matters, it's the business value of what we do. So what we have decided is to take a methodical approach, ask the question, given it's the SWIFT network, what is about the transaction data that I can use to really build transaction intelligence? So starting with anomaly detection 1.0, we have a payment controls product which screens the messages. Again, we don't do anything but just generate the alerts. It's the financial institution that does the due diligence on whether the alert is fraud or not, etc. What we would like to do is give you the best accurate anomaly detection out of the box, given the richness of this web data. Second is to get this to line speed, as Tom pointed out. It's roughly fractions of seconds today. We're looking at this high-performance platform we are building with C3 to get you to milliseconds and microseconds. In principle, if I could start with this base anomaly detection and construct 11,000 adapted models for every institution, that is going to be the highest accuracy solution. And if I could run those in parallel in a winner-take-all mechanism, clearly I'll get the best results. But that will require that I get the compute time of each model down to something substantial. And that's what we are doing. In fact, we are partnering with the Argonne National Lab, one of the Department of Energy labs, to first show the art of the possible on the fastest computer on Earth today, the exaflop machine called Aurora, to see how fast can we compute these anomalies. Then we'll create an equivalent on-prem infrastructure with this unique software-defined memory called Cove with C3 to see how much of it can we squeeze out on an on-prem infrastructure. And by the way, one thing we'll do is provide whatever we do in the open as open innovation to the entire community. Third, there's a roughly 1 billion account holders on the SWIFT network across these institutions. We're going through the appropriate data governance to enable getting information about the account holders. If I know the temporal characteristics of how an individual account holder sends transactions, whether it's anomalies or anti-money laundering, there's a huge signature of the anomaly in the time course of the transactions that are being sent. So we'll start using that to improve the anomaly detection even further. The last ambition, this is the holy grail, and I'll come to that if you go to the next slide. Before I get to that, just to show you where we are at the really starting point of our journey. I'll say the first sprint of a marathon, or version 0.1 of potentially version 10. But we are seeing significant improvements already compared to the current rule-based systems, which is our payment control product. We are showing roughly about 40% improvement using a data-driven AI approach to the anomaly detection. And this is a simple, I think, you talked about from Bank of America, logistic regression. So now random forest to deep learning, we expect to improve this substantially. Now, I use the word F1, I'm used by data scientists. This is really a harmonic mean of precision and recall. That is, how many of the actual anomalies are you getting first, and how many of those are actually correct. So bottom line, when you improve F1, you're reducing the false positives and increasing the true positives. So there are a number of multi-bank initiatives that are in flight today across Asia, Europe, and North America, focused on anti-money laundering or fraud. And they either share fraud labels or AML signatures, essentially. In the UK, MasterCard VocaLink, we were talking about it yesterday, is another which has done a lot of work on actually sharing the anomalies and anomaly labels. All of these are starting out on evaluating privacy-preserving data sharing technologies. There are things like homomorphic encryption, where you're computing the models in encrypted space, or multi-party computation, where you're actually splitting up the models in a way where no individual can know what that model is actually doing, to secure enclaves from Microsoft and Intel, et cetera, where you have hardware-level encryption that allows you to actually only compute in the clear with the key of that particular machine, so nobody else can do anything with it. So, but all of these have limitations on generality. Some you can only do a query. Some you can do a simple logistic regression. To some you're getting down to deep learning. They're computationally complex. Some, from 1x, sometimes homomorphic encryption can take 10 to 100x the computation. So part of what we would like to do, what we would love to start providing value to the community, is to provide a simulated data set that is relatively high utility of the SWIFT traffic, and like to partner with folks like Bank of America and other big players to create a data set somewhat akin to the ImageNet database that unleashed the deep learning revolution, to what was done with people with GPT-2, 3, and on sort of machine translation, somewhat similar to that. In partnership with our financial community, if we can provide that to really unleash innovation and benchmark where these privacy-preserving technologies are, that'll be fantastic. Now, we believe that we are starting, this is a statement of our ambition and aspiration, that the way we are building C3 on a containerized platform with Red Hat OpenShift, with the software-defined memory, ideally positions us to really federate models, not the data, so that the data doesn't move. We are moving models. We build a baseline model at Swift, push it over to, let's say, Bank of America. We use data that you have on your premise, improve it, pull it back to the mothership, do this with, let's say, Deutsche Bank, and iterate ad infinitum without moving the data. In fact, Tom Siebel talked about it at our Sibos last year, this notion of moving the models and iteratively improving that. That is our ambition and aspiration, to really now start with Swift, but really partner with all of our partner institutions to get to. In fact, love to partner with MasterCard and Visa because they have incredibly rich retail fraud models. It's the same sender, beneficiary, and a corridor. There'll be some transformations that are required. Question is, could we run a MasterCard model in parallel with, let's say, Swift model, again, in a winner-take-all model to get higher accuracy? We are open for co-innovation, as Tom pointed out. We would love the community to come start working with us to really move the needle on these multi-bank initiatives and truly provide value to the entire financial industry. Thank you.
All right, so we have a few minutes. Why don't we open it up for a quick question and answer? I think we have a roving mic if anyone has a question they'd like to ask. Okay. I have a question. I'm going to start with Chalapathy.
Can you ask questions?
I think I can. I'm going to ask the hardest one in the room.
Yeah.
But it's Chalapathy. So, yes. So, Federated AI, really appreciate the vision. From the perspective of a Swift community member that would like to respond to your call to action and cooperate with Swift, what are some of the practical artifacts that they can expect to see as this vision is implemented gradually?
Right. So, as I said at the end, we're starting down this path already with some known players like Deutsche Bank and Societe Generale, etc. We are setting up initially bilateral engagements that allows us to, through appropriate legal contracts, allow us to share the data of that financial institution on the SWIFT network, no movement of data, to first demonstrate that on top of the baseline SWIFT model, by adding data from that, let's say, euro traffic or dollar traffic, I can improve the baseline. Unless we demonstrate that, everything else is a moot point, right? Once we do that, I'd like to then start thinking about constructing a platform architecture, the last slide I pointed out, that allows us to federate this on both sides and test out the model federation and do this at scale. Starting with sort of a beta demonstration, and then if everything works, to our general availability with a few foundation partners, and then we can make this reference architecture and implementation available to all of our customers.
Thank you, Chalapathy. Yes, question?
Yeah.
Would you please introduce yourself and your organization to put the question in context? Thank you.
Manav Misra with Regions Bank. So the question I had was, so in addition to anomaly detection,
Right.
do you get back information that can help you kind of create a labeled data set around fraud that you can then, so in addition to making these models available to your member banks, is there the ability to create a labeled data set that can be used more broadly?
Right. So this question comes up in every one of our customer interactions, and part of our initial forays into setting up this feedback loop to precisely get the ground truth. But what we have compared to most financial institutions, most of them we talk to say, have you seen any fraudulent transaction over the last 1 year? Say, no, it's zero. I mean, you're talking about the imbalanced data set that my colleague from Bank of America talked about. But what we have through our customer security intelligence is when we send the alerts, we actually do the due diligence, and we have, say, between 200 to 250 labeled fraudulent transactions that we use. Now we are simulating that based on the individual customer traffic to enable us to build these models more effectively. But part of what we are doing is both to drive the business benefit. We say, how many alerts do we generate for you? How many people do you deploy to do the due diligence on those alerts? What's the cost of that? So I can say if I improve the number of alerts and the false positives by, let's say, 20%, what's the equivalent operational efficiency I create for you? And I want that to be meaningful. And it's going to change. Large customers, they spend a lot of money. People like Bank of America versus smaller banks, it'll be very small. For them, improving by 20% may not mean much. So yes, we are establishing the feedback loops to create better and better ground truth data. And we are simulating. We're actually, with Argonne National Lab, we're creating a very high utility simulation that models the joint probabilities of every field in the transactions. You know, currencies dependent upon the country, to the amount dependent upon the currency, the corridor, etc. And when we have that available, I'd love to provide that to the community to unleash innovation. So, long answer to your short question, but yes, we are establishing these round-trip feedback loops.
We really appreciate your time today. We appreciate the partnership greatly. And thank you for being a great customer and partner to C3.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
For having us.